people know this or not, but Tucker Carlson has this propensity to interview and have a conversation with literally anybody. So why the hoopla? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you why the hoopla. It's because this guest said some pretty wild and crazy stuff.
He didn't commit the most atrocities, but I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. Or just, I mean, at every step of the way, like people are very often, I find, surprised to learn. There's a two-step process.
Well,
right?
why don't you just make the case for that? Okay, so you've made your statement. A lot of people are thinking, well, wait a second. You just said Churchill, my childhood hero, the guy with the cigar.
Okay, now before we talk about Darryl Cooper, Winston Churchill, Adolf Hitler, World War II, or anything, I want you guys to know right now two things. Number one, this right here is not some detailed historical piece. It's more along the lines of a common sense piece. Number two, actually, it's three things I need to let you guys know. But number two, I want you guys to know right now that I'm not surprised that Tucker Carlson interviewed this guy, given his history of interviews. I mean, look, there was even a bit where he interviewed an actual Satanist at one time. The guy used to come on his show all the time. It was normally on Friday nights when people weren't watching Tucker, but still he has a propensity to interview just about anybody. I mean, the guy did go to Russia, have a sit down with Putin when many people would probably not have a sit down with Putin. Kind of funny how it is that Oliver Stone got praised for his interview with Putin. As a matter of fact, they did an entire Showtime special on it, and Tucker Carlson got attacked. And number three, the video that I originally had scheduled for today, which was a follow-up to the video that's coming out at 12 o'clock on Anna Kasparian's, let's just say, discontent with MSNBC, that video will be moved to tomorrow. And one more thing, too. There will only be one other video coming out tomorrow, which will come out at 5 o'clock. It'll probably be a post-mortem debate video because, obviously, we've got the Harris-Trump debate tonight. I want to watch that. I'm probably going to watch it twice because it'll therefore be available on YouTube again. And, of course, I'll just pull out certain key moments and try to have that video out at 5 o'clock. If I don't have that video out at 5 o'clock, it'll probably be out on Thursday. Still, though, I want to go ahead and say that before we get started. Now, before we really and truly dive in, make sure you guys go ahead and turn on the notifications for the channel so that way you guys are notified when the video is released. If you guys can, please go ahead and hit the like button for the algorithm. Also, share the video. If you guys are new here, if you want to subscribe, please do so. It does not cost you anything. Please, let's make this channel a little bit bigger so that way we can avoid the shadow bans, and let's go ahead and
villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities, but I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. You know, Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared.
Yeah, maybe if you don't invade another nation, maybe if you choose to, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe kind of sit back and think and maybe process in your mind that if we invade this nation, we're going to have a lot of people that, quite frankly, we can't feed or take care of, even though we're obviously trying to enslave these people. I think that anytime somebody brings up the whole notion of, well, he wasn't prepared for this, I think it's flawed, especially given the fact that a lot of these people talk about this from a situation of that was the right thing to do at the time. No. The best thing that Hitler could have done was maybe not invade Russia. I'm just simply saying that as a bit of a preview before we respond to all this nonsense. So Tucker Carlson did an interview the other day with a guy who claims to be a historian by the name of Darryl Cooper. Now, I'm not that familiar with Cooper, but I am a little bit familiar with what Mr. Cooper was talking about. And yes, we're going to be talking about World War II. Now, there's one more thing I do want to go ahead and establish. Throughout the history of the world, we have had several, and I mean several, murderous dictators, some of which, of course, were driven by overall power, some were driven by land, some were driven by historical, let's just say historical agreements, some, of course, were driven by race. We all know about Adolf Hitler's deal. However, I have to kind of remind people that it wasn't just one race that he wanted to eradicate, while it was, in fact, the chief race he wanted to eradicate. Adolf Hitler, pretty much for the most part, disliked everybody, a lot more than just Jews. Yeah, he absolutely hated the Slavs. He hated the quote-unquote gypsies. He had them locked up. Anybody who basically disagreed with him, political prisoners that was not in the military, he had eliminated. Now, real quick, history buffs are probably going to want to tear this video apart because I'm probably going to be coming at this from a more common sense angle, leaving certain details out from time to time because, like I said, it's not a historical piece. It's more of a common sense piece based upon what we know, which, by the way, I want you guys, if you're a historian or a historical buff, please leave a comment in the comment section. I do want to hear what you got to say. I do plan on creating a history channel at a later date because I am a bit of a buff. But still, though, I want you guys to please leave a comment in the comment section. I would love to hear what you guys have got to say on this. So please feel free to join in. The thing is this right here. Murderous dictators, you have to include Stalin. You have to include Mao Zedong. I mean, the crap that Stalin was doing after the Great Famine really in a lot of ways was way worse than what, well, it seems way worse, but of course we kind of give Stalin hero status because he fought back against the Nazis during World War II. But then again, at the same time, he also joined into an agreement with the Nazis, and it came to the topic of Poland. Now, many people have said that he did that to buy himself some time to potentially fight Adolf Hitler at a later date. But given Stalin's behavior, I don't fully agree with that. Please comment in the comments. I'd love to hear what you got to say. Mao Zedong was also a murderous dictator. You've also got Pol Pot, who I think killed, right around a third of his nation's population. If you go all the way back in history, you get other dictators. You get Sennacherib, you get Ramses II, you get the original, Nimrod. You get all these people who have certain things about them where they hate certain people and they have certain agendas that they want to put through. The fact of the matter is that calling Winston Churchill the bad guy or thinking that he was the bad guy when it comes to World War II is really naive, and I really have a hard time understanding where this guy got this bit of information. Now, before we get started, before we get to take a look at some of these clips, let me go ahead and address something really quick because there are some content creators out there who think that World War II was completely unavoidable, and my response to that is, yeah, it kind of was. If the Treaty of Versailles had been handled correctly, if that right there had been done perfectly, which of course perfection is something that we quite frankly cannot ever achieve, then it's very possible that World War II, which was a continuance of World War I, might not have happened. But still, at the same time, though, it did happen, and I am in the camp that obviously it did, in fact, need to be fought. I want to go ahead and get that out of the way before we go any further. Now, let's take a look at some of what Mr. Cooper said and why it was that Tucker is, let's just say, found himself under fire this past week.
What's going on? So, for example, and I'm American, I'm not English, so I don't have any weird motive in asking this, but how would you assess Winston Churchill?
I got in trouble with my podcast partner, Jocko Willink, one time because he's a New England Dutchman whose his family, it's near and dear to, they're Dutch, but very near and dear to their heart that Winston Churchill is a hero, right?
Well, everyone
thinks that. He really thinks that. And I told him that I think, and maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, maybe, but I told him, maybe trying to provoke him a little bit, that I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War.
Really quick, before I let this go any further, I want to go ahead and say one more thing. And by the way, I'm re-editing this clip in. This particular guy, Darryl Cooper, there's a moment during this particular discussion with Tucker, which I was actually quite disappointed in, that I went back and re-watched before putting this video out. And it was a little segment where he got the dates wrong. For example, he talks about Churchill being the bad guy when Hitler invaded Poland. The problem with that is that Churchill did not become Prime Minister of Europe until the following year. And the person who, and I may have alluded to this earlier, that kind of let the walls come down was Neville Chamberlain when he chose to appease Adolf Hitler. There's a lot of falsities here. And like I said, this is for the most part one that's designed to be more common sense rather than historical in nature, based upon a common sense perspective, because a lot of this can be debunked. Historians are having all kinds of fun ripping this guy's stuff to pieces. But look, man, when you're getting the dates wrong and you claim to be a historian, I don't think you're really and truly a historian. It sounds more to me like he's exactly what I've been saying, or I'm going to say multiple times in this video, an absolute first-rate fruitcake.
Said Churchill, my childhood hero, the guy with the cigar.
Yeah. Well, and the next thought that comes into their head is that, oh, you're saying Churchill was the chief villain, therefore his enemies, Adolf Hitler and so forth, were
Stalin,
the protagonists, right?
Yeah.
That they're the good guys if you think he's a villain. That's not the case. That's not what I'm saying. Germany, look, they put themselves into a into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners, and so forth, that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just
This guy
threw
right
these
here, to
people.
me, I think his reasoning is 100% absolutely flawed, but I think I know the reason why it is he's doing this. However, I want to go ahead and say this really quick. Before I address Hitler not being prepared for what was coming, which is obviously utterly BS, because he actually was prepared for what's to come. By the way, he's primarily talking about Operation Barbarossa. I probably should have led with that first, but the way this interview kind of went, it was a little bit, let's just say, kind of weird to kind of structure this. Saying that Winston Churchill was the villain of World War II is stupid. And let me explain the reason why it's so stupid. If you want to blame somebody or you want to say somebody is a villain for World War II outside of Adolf Hitler, then maybe you want to look at Neville Chamberlain, the guy who was the prime minister before Winston Churchill. You see, Chamberlain had an opportunity to show some form of strength when Adolf Hitler went to the Sudetenland, which of course was Czechoslovakia. Neville Chamberlain chose not to do that. He chose to appease Adolf Hitler, and as a result of this, Hitler decided to take a little bit more. Eventually, he invades Poland. Eventually, he invades France. Eventually, after that, he goes into the Scandinavian nations. Also, in the process, he found a way to go ahead and launch himself into Belgium, the Netherlands, Holland at that time. So I don't think that Winston Churchill was the bad guy or the villain. Of course, some people are going to go crazy over this, but if anything, I think Winston Churchill was the voice of warning. Let me give you another example. There's the whole naughty document, the Potsdam Conference. Winston Churchill had a fear that the communists at some point in time were going to, I don't know, maybe try to overtake Europe, and that he was scared that the United States would allow that to happen. Ho, 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 ho! That's right. When FDR was alive, the guy that we keep saying is one of the greatest presidents in American history, when in reality he's really not. FDR was willing to allow Joseph Stalin to have Eastern Europe, even though throughout late 1944 and 1945, there have been several operations where U.S. personnel had seen exactly what it was the Russians intended on doing. Now, granted, like I said before, the Nazis are definitely the bad guys. I want to go ahead and make that perfectly clear before we go any further. As to say I didn't say that before, I do want to say this right now. Joseph Stalin had no intentions of freeing Europe. He obviously chose to put them under the Iron Curtain, and they would remain under the Iron Curtain until Ronald Reagan would eventually say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Now, eventually, it would take some time for the Soviet Union to officially dissolve, officially on December the 25th, 1991, maybe in 26, I'm not entirely sure. Historians are going to have a hard time, historians are going to have fun tearing some of this apart. I expect that. I want historians to comment on this. But the point is this right here. Churchill was warning the United States of what was to come. So I don't see how the hell he's actually a villain. I think Mr. Cooper's reasoning on this is completely flawed, and I'm not even a historian. I'm just a common sense guy that can point out the obvious. By the way, George S. Patton, it was believed that he wanted to hit the Russians and invade Russia after World War II. No, that was not the case at all. He felt it would be a good idea to possibly kick their butts back into Russia where they belong, but of course there are a lot of myths about that too that may come up in another video. Like I said, I do in fact plan on doing a history channel at some point in time that's going to focus primarily on American history, and of course we're probably going to do a little bit of world history, definitely World War I, World War II, Wars of the World, that type of thing there too, but of course that's an ambition, passion project that is yet to come. But about Hitler being unprepared. Well, he obviously wasn't unprepared when he invaded Poland. What's the first thing he did when he invaded Poland after he started beating the Polish military? He started taking in Polish Jews, and what he started doing? Putting them in ghettos, eventually inside concentration camps. Remember Auschwitz? Yes, I don't want to sound like some apologist out here for the Israel side, but the fact of the matter is history is history. Now, something else, too, needs to be said. Apparently, Elon Musk got into trouble because he said this is very, very interesting. I personally think that Elon was coming at it from either one or two angles. He came at that from a level of ignorance, or he came at a level of, I really and truly want to hear what this guy's got to say. You can be that way even if the person who's talking that you're interested in listening to what they have to say is obviously full of crap. But still, the mere fact that Hitler was not prepared for what was to come, I think that there's a load of BS. But before I talk about that, let's listen to a little bit more so that way I can further explain what I mean by, yeah, this argument of Hitler and the Germans not being prepared is a load of crap.
And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there. You know, you have like letters as early as July, August 1941 from commandants of these makeshift camps that they're setting up for these millions of people who are surrendering or people they're rounding up. And so it's 2 months after, a month or two after Barbarossa was launched. And they're writing back to the high command in Berlin saying, we can't feed these people. We don't have the food to feed these people. And one of them actually says, rather than wait for them all to slowly starve this winter, wouldn't it be more humane to just finish them off quickly now? Of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there. You know, you have like letters as early as July, August 1941 from commandants of these makeshift camps that they're setting up for these millions of people who are surrendering or people they're rounding up. And so it's 2 months after, a month or two after Barbarossa was launched. And they're writing back to the high command in Berlin saying, we can't feed these people. We don't have the food to feed these people. And one of them actually says, rather than wait for them all to slowly starve this winter, wouldn't it be more humane to just finish them off quickly now?
Completely unprepared before going into the East. Let me go ahead and let you guys in on a little secret. Operation Barbarossa, June of 1941, was supposed to take place in May of 1941. One of the reasons why it did not take place in June was because Hitler was, of course, assisting Mussolini because the Italians were so damn ineffective during World War II. I know this is probably going to make me sound like I'm being pro one side here. That's quite frankly the bad side, but listen to me right quick. I'm coming at this from a common sense historical perspective. Anybody with just basic bare bones knowledge knows that the Italians under Mussolini were crap. They couldn't fight. They were very ineffective. Hitler had to continue to support that person there. That right there being Italy, that right there being Mussolini. Eventually bad things would happen to him. That should have happened. But still, the fact of the matter is this right here. This whole notion that the Germans were not prepared for what was coming is a load of crap. They've been prepared for years, actually ever since 1939. Hitler had wanted to invade Russia for a very long time. It's almost like he wanted to repeat or he wanted to undo Napoleon's mistakes. That's another topic altogether about the Grand Armée. Not going to get too much into this, but of course the general consensus is that if you invade Russia, you better be prepared to lose. It's one of the reasons why it is. I don't think that Patton really and truly wanted to invade Russia. I talked about this earlier, but still the point is this right here. You can't sit here and say that Hitler was not prepared for it. Now, there has been the argument, and of course there's a guy who made a video about this recently named Henry Stewart History, a guy that I think is absolutely hilarious. Very, very good channel. I'll probably link it in the description box, where he talked about the possibility, and this right here was also put in a book by Bevan Alexander called How Hitler Could Have Won World War II, about how it is that if Hitler had gone into Russia as a liberator rather than going into Russia as a conqueror, it's very possible that Russia may have assisted. Now, me personally, I don't fully agree with that. I own the book and have read it, and I've read the thesis. I think if anything, what might have happened is maybe the people of the Ukraine and southern Russia may have assisted, but not the people who live in northern Russia. Russians are very, very fanatical about their country, even though they weren't really and truly fanatical about Stalin. They were forced to be indoctrinated by Stalin. I mean, hell, you had to have portraits of Stalin where everywhere you went. You had to have him in your factories. You had to have basically pictures of him in your home. That's how bad the indoctrination was. Soviet Union at that time, or Russia at least, they were in fact tyrannical, and in some cases even more tyrannical than what Germany was. But still, the point is this right here. The theory is that if Adolf Hitler had gone in as a liberator, he might have been able to pull off some type of win, or it wouldn't have been as hard for him to overtake Russia or defeat the Russian army. But back to him not being prepared. Let me just go ahead and say this right now. There were orders that were issued out basically saying that if there's any stragglers, whatever, just go ahead and shoot them. That's basically what the actual standing orders were. And of course, they were filling the concentration camps with not just Jews and political undesirables, but possible political enemies, people of no use. And of course, as you may already know, if you weren't used to these people in the concentration camps, they would in fact put a bullet in them. That's just how that regime operated. So do me a favor and stop with the whole they were unprepared for this crap. Maybe what you should have done was, I don't know, maybe not launch the invasion. Maybe what you should have done was not launch the war. Maybe that right there would have been the best course of action. Maybe that right there is what you should have done. Or maybe you should have agreed upon a certain point to stop. The fact of the matter is that Adolf Hitler was an absolute fruitcake, and anybody out here saying that Winston Churchill was the bad guy without looking at how maniacal and how maniacally stupid Adolf Hitler is just a very, very bad take. The truth be told is this right here. The way they prepared for this was by issuing out orders saying any stragglers are to be shot. That type of thing there. So their logic falls apart when you simply ask, why did you invade? Well, he invaded for this reason here. Was that the right thing to do? Should Adolf Hitler have invaded the Soviet Union? Should he have done this? Should he have invaded Russia? Probably not. I'm pretty sure if he had not invaded, then therefore we probably would not have had this issue to be talking about, which at the same time is one of the main reasons why it is that I believe that this man's reasoning is flawed. Basically what I'm saying is that if you choose not to invade, if you choose not to, I don't know, play the whole, I hate this race, I hate these people over here, because Hitler did have an extreme hatred for the Slavs, then maybe, just maybe, you would not find yourself in a position where you were executing stragglers and prisoners. People who, by the way, could have actually assisted you in overtaking Russia. But of course, Hitler didn't believe in that because he hated the Slavs. Adolf Hitler was a fruitcake. He was a maniac. That right there is the truth about Adolf Hitler. Now, is he the worst dictator of all time? Well, if we have a conversation about that, next thing you know, we're going to be talking about all the people that Mao Zedong killed. We're going to be talking about all the people that Pol Pot killed. We're going to be talking about all the people that Joseph Stalin killed. But of course, the mainstream media, the liberal media, for whatever reason, does not want to talk about this. So we just choose to focus on Hitler and Hitler alone. Still, though, at the same time, though, it does not change the fact that Hitler was an absolute fruitcake and he was a madman. Doesn't change that at all. It also doesn't change the fact that he was not the military genius that he thought he was. It doesn't change the fact that Adolf Hitler did not have to invade Russia because, as I may have mentioned before, invading Russia is almost like self-deletion. Napoleon tried it, didn't work. I mean, hell, the Swedes even tried it back in the days of Peter the Great. That didn't work out too well. The Russians are fanatical about their own country. They'll burn down their own country to kill you. That's how the Russians operate, and it doesn't matter who the hell their leader is. They're still going to do it anyways because they are, in fact, fanatical about their own nation. Adolf Hitler underestimated this and overestimated his own forces. That right there is what the hell really happened. He was cocky. He was very, very much what Andrew Roberts would say, a Nazi, not only in the way he carried himself as in party, also in mindset too. I think I'll link that little lecture in the description box. I advise you guys watch it. This guy right here, Cooper, I don't know what to say. I mean, maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe I haven't seen enough of this guy, but this interview to me was just flat out wacky. But there is one more thing that I do need to say that people love to forget about when having a conversation or having this conversation. It's not like Tucker Carlson just sat back and let the guy talk and get away with murder. I mean, Tucker did push back and ask the guy to, I don't know, maybe make his case. Okay, now real quick, I listened to this interview and I thought to myself, you know what? A lot of people are giving Tucker crap for this reason and that reason there. And this is what I'm going to say. Go back to what I said at the very beginning. Tucker Carlson interviews everybody, so I don't see how the hell you can beat him up for that. And by the way, Tucker Carlson has had some takes recently that I did not agree with. And I personally like Tucker. If you guys know my channel, you know that I have always liked Tucker. I don't agree with everything he says. For example, his take on the United States bombing Japan after World War II. I 100% absolutely disagree with him on that take. All right, but still, though, at the same time, though, I'm not stupid enough to just throw the guy under the bus and pass judgment on him for bits and pieces of an interview when people obviously should have watched the whole thing. And as I said earlier, I think this guy Cooper is an absolute fruitcake and a whack job, and I think this guy is not to be taken seriously. But still, though, at the same time, though, it's a good thing that Tucker did, in fact, interview this guy, so that way we can see that, hey, there's another freaking fruitcake not to pay attention to. With that right there being said, though, guys, you tell me what you think in the comment section. I know this video is probably going to ruffle a few feathers. At this point in time, though, I'm kind of exacerbated by all the spin out there, including spin from the conservative side as well. Now, as far as this week is concerned, obviously this video is coming out on Tuesday evening. I'm going to be watching the debate tonight, give you guys some analysis. I'll come back with the follow-up on Anna Kasparian versus MSNBC probably on Wednesday. As far as the rest of the week is concerned, I may come back to the Russiagate thing or the Lauren Chen situation because apparently there's a brand new talking point out there that people are saying that could be used against her, which of course is going to ruffle some feathers as well. So make sure you guys stick around for that. Please leave a comment in the comment section. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sound off, and I'll see you guys later.